Well, my screen says that you are now recording.
Okay, there we go. So the board meeting is being recorded and it will be made available to the public. Obviously, with any kind of media, it becomes a public record. So the meeting is now a public record, or the video of the meeting is a public record. We do ask again to make sure you have audio at least. If we lose video, then, we will deal with that, but we want to make sure that all of the board members can be heard. If there is a member of the public that loses their connection, or all of a sudden the video goes out or the audio goes out and you lose the broadcast, please let us know. And we have the telephone number and email address for Tanya Pettis, so it's 804-367-0362. If you could let us know right away, because we will need to stop the meeting until we can make sure we have the broadcast restored. As you all know, because we've been going through virtual meetings almost a year now, just make sure you mute if you aren't speaking, just to help with the everyone being able to hear one another. It may be helpful if you have the capability through your Google Meets to turn on closed captioning, which I will do now, just to help to make sure you capture everything. And again, we'll have that on for the broadcast as well. And then we've already covered, but just to make sure everyone knows, we will be doing a roll call vote for each vote that we have today. So just make sure, board members, that you're listening in and are ready to voice your vote when we get to that. All right, D4 staff members, any other updates that we've talked about that I forgot? Okay.
With that, Ms. Henshaw, are we ready to move forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So our next item is approval of the minutes from our October 22, 2020 meeting.
I have a comment, please, on the minutes. Under future meeting dates in the minutes, it says that Ms. Pruitt reminded the board that the next scheduled meeting date is October 22nd, 2020. That should be January 14th, 2021.
Good catch.
I do read this stuff.
I read it, but I didn't catch it, so.
And that being said, I move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Very good, thank you. Do we have a
second? Second.
Any discussion on the matter? All right, then. By that, we will do a roll call vote. I'm going to defer to Ms. Henshaw.
Thank you. So we'll go through our roll call vote. James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook.
Aye.
Erica Duncan.
Aye.
Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
Aye.
Tom Four.
Aye.
Pam Pruitt.
Aye.
Don Riggleman.
Aye.
Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
Wayne Staples.
Aye.
And Caleb Taylor.
Aye.
All right. Thank you all very much.
And the motion passes. So next on the agenda, we have the public comment period.
Yes, Madam Chair. Let me get to that. All right. So what we're going to do, hopefully, comments are limited to 5 minutes, so we do ask that you limit comments to 5 minutes. We do ask, if you would like to comment, to go ahead and enter your name and your organization or affiliation, if applicable, into the chat, mainly so that we can make sure to properly record it for the minutes. Normally, if you're at a board meeting, we have you sign in so that we can make sure to get your name right and all of that. So if you plan on speaking, if you want to go ahead and put that in the chat, that would be very helpful. And then after you provide your comment, we would ask that you please mute your audio, and unless the board were to have questions of you, to maintain having your microphone muted for the duration of the meeting. And so with that, Madam Chairman, whenever you're ready to call for any public comment, you are welcome to do so.
Okay, with the first speaker, do we have anybody who wishes to make public comment? I hear crickets. With that, correct me if I'm wrong, I have heard no response. Speak now, forever hold your peace. All right then. Moving on to regulatory actions. Ms. Henshaw.
Yes, Madam Chair, if the board members in public would go to page 12 of the electronic agenda, we have our regulatory action update, and I'm going to turn it over to Joe Howitt to give an overview of our current regulatory actions.
Okay. Thank you. Madam Chair, again, starting on page 12 of your agenda, we have an update on regulatory actions that are ongoing. We have two. Those are the periodic review of the Waterworks and Wastewater Works operators licensing regulations and the on-site sewage system professionals licensing regulations. We issued a notice of periodic review or filed that on October the 6th for publication in the Virginia Register to begin on October the 26th. That would start a public comment period from the 26th to November the 16th. We did receive one comment on each chapter of the regulations, one comment per chapter. So we have those ready for your review and then consideration on the periodic review a little bit after this. Do any board members have any questions? Okay.
No.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, the next items begin on pages 13 and pages 43 of your agenda. We have the periodic review information for each of the chapters of the regulations. The beginning on page 13 is Chapter 30, which is the Waterworks and Wastewater Works operators licensing regulations. The page 13 just outlines the notice of periodic review that was filed on Virginia Regulatory Town Hall. On page 35, we have the comment that was received from Mr. Wanless during the periodic review public comment period. And then on page 37, we have a summary of the comments provided by Mr. Wanless, as well as a draft response for the board's consideration. Now, I don't know if at this point any board members have any questions or any changes they would like to make to the draft response for comments.
Anybody out there? I'm sorry, Trish.
No, not at all. And just so you know, as we go through this, we will need whatever motion comes at the end of this. It's kind of two actions. One is to adopt the draft board response. And so if you have any amendments to that draft that staff put together, certainly we will make those. And however the board would prefer to do it, we're happy to go through kind of each summary and then the response that's been drafted by staff to make whatever changes the board would like. And again, at the end of that, we will need to do a motion, and I'll help us get through that when we get to that point. So, but right now we kind of want to look at the comments that we received and the response that we have.
Okay.
My feeling is that as far as each level of licensure, the requirements to obtain that licensure via the experience, I think it's spelled out in the regulations. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anybody else? How about you, Mr. Ford? What say you?
Just looking at the adding operator and training we don't regulate operator and training, and so I don't know why you would add a definition for something that we don't regulate. So that's my comment.
Good point. Thank you. Anybody else? Nothing. Crickets. Okay, so then I guess we would move back to the draft response then, correct, Ms. Henshaw?
Yes, so that, it sounds like the comments that we just covered are about the suggestion to add operator in training. And again, as both board members noted, we kind of, in our proposed response, had drafted that we don't have the authority, or the board doesn't have the authority to expand its licensing program to include that level of criteria and all of that for operator in training. Certainly, if the board thought there was a need for a definition of operator in training, that is something that in a regulatory review action the board could consider. Right now it would be the plain language definition, which, you know, is kind of, you are an operator who is training.
All right then.
I have
Any comments
one additional comment, please.
Yes, absolutely.
It's sort of my understanding that if you're an employee of a facility that has a licensed operator requirement, if you do not have that license requirement, you are automatically an operator in training. Is that the correct assumption? So that anybody that's working at a facility but is not licensed at the appropriate level is an operator in training,
That makes
regardless
sense.
of what level.
Well, I would say that if you have a requirement that your job depends upon you obtaining a license, yes. But we have areas where we don't require employees to get a license that are working at the plant.
Okay.
Okay.
Works for me.
Anybody? Okay. Anybody else? Any other comments? All right. So it sounds like my understanding, Trish, is that we may need a motion now.
If we want to go through the whole public comment document, and that way we can just cover it all with one motion. And so the next comment from the same commenter is to consider eliminating language related to the time period that an applicant has to complete their application and then take the examination. And so currently you have 12 months from the date you submit your application and the department receives it to complete your application. And then you also have 12 months from the date that we approve your application to complete the examination. If you don't complete the examination for whatever reason during that 12-month period, you do have to reapply. And that's so that we can ensure that, you know, your qualifications are still met, that, you know, if there's been any kind of disciplinary action or criminal convictions or anything like that, that information is submitted. And so there wasn't detail in terms of whether or not the commenter was asking for an indefinite period or a different period. And so, again, the draft proposed by staff is that, you know, having a limitation, this limitation is consistent with what other boards within the agency do. So most of them do 12 months for completing your app and 12 months to take the examination. And within that period, the only limitation on the number of times you can take it with this particular board, so with water and wastewater, is the 30 days or 10 days, depending on which exam you're taking, that you have to wait to reschedule. So you can take it, you know, 10 times a year easily if, you know, you were in that situation. So again, you can see the proposal by staff just kind of reiterates that, but certainly if the board has some other suggestions.
Anybody?
I would have a comment on that. Essentially, I think what the guy is asking here is, because the period from the presentation of the application to its approval or completion, that can vary depending on if they don't have enough materials they need to add to it or whatever. the real key is that once it is approved, they've got 12 months to either get licensed or they have to reapply. Is that correct, Trish?
Yes, that is correct. So once they're approved, and I think you're capturing what the kind of central issue is that time period to be able to take the exam, and the concern that is not enough time for people to take and pass the water and wastewater exams, that 12-month limitation for those candidates.
And as the proposed board response indicates, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months may not be enough time for some people. You know, if they're just not able to pass the exam for whatever reason, and having it open-ended like that is not, I don't think, is not conducive to a good program. As I understand it, I think the main crux of his argument, of Dennis's argument here, is that if they have to reapply, they're going to have to assemble all that material that they originally submitted. And it's been my understanding that once you've applied, if you do have to reapply and it requires attachments of copies of things like this, that you can refer to those in your previous application without having to actually submit those extra copies. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Staples. I know in the past, essentially all the information had to be resubmitted. Our current practice is that if we have it on file, we're not going to ask for it again. And so we have a retention period. I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly. It's several years when we have an application in this situation that we have it on file. And so if an applicant is having to come back through, just lets us know, like, I've already submitted. We'll pull the experience. We might need an experience update. If you submitted transcripts, those types of things, we'll pull that information so it doesn't have to be resubmitted. Now, if you wait a number of years to apply again, then of course you would likely need to submit the full package in order to be reviewed and approved for the exam.
That's what I understood it to be also. Okay.
I'll jump in here. I think we do need a timeline, and I think 1 year is more than generous for people that can and are aggressive in obtaining their license.
I agree.
Tricia, I had a question following up with Wayne. You said that you can refer to previous applications. Is that just for that one license? It's like class 3 license. You can refer back to that class 3 every time, but as a class 1, you're applying for the class 1, would you still have to use everything, or can you refer to that class 3 application?
So I try to make it our practice, and licensing staff, is really great about it. As long as they know you have another application on file and you have materials on file, we'll do what we can to retrieve what we already have so that you don't have to resubmit. So even if you're upgrading, as long as that, again, hasn't been a long period of time, and once you are issued a license, there's a 10-year retention period on your application. So if we have it, we'll pull it. We're not going to ask, but the applicants, we just ask them to let us know so that we aren't, spending time with every application digging through files that might not be there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
Have we covered everything with that one item?
Yes.
Okay, so then moving on to the next, I think.
Yes, Madam Chair, the next item talks about the commenter is asking if the board will permit applications who passed an ABC exam in another jurisdiction to come to Virginia to operate in the same category and class without having passed a board-approved exam in Virginia to become licensed. that I was a little bit confused because it implies there's a difference between the ABC exam and the exam offered by Virginia. When in fact, except for class 4 and 5 for Waterworks, those are the exact ABC exams. So there's not a separate Virginia exam. It's just Virginia board uses the ABC exam as its approved exam at this time. So again, the draft response that we've proposed would be for no change because effectively we're already accepting that exam.
Okay. Any questions or comments about that?
I do. I want to make sure that I understand this. So if I have a Class 1 Virginia operator and they want to go to Kentucky, God forbid they leave the state, but if they want to go to Kentucky, do they have to take another test or are they good? And vice versa, if Kentucky wants to come to Virginia, are they good?
So I can't speak to going the other way since that's up to the other state what they will accept. For coming to Virginia, speaking to that, as long as they were in a state that is an ABC exam state and they took the ABC exam, we would accept that same class. So if they took a class 3 ABC exam in another state and they want to come to Virginia, of course, there's a conversion. So it's a class 2 here. We'll accept that exam straight in for the class 2. You still have to show us your experience and education if that's applicable, but we'll insert that exam into the exam slot of the checklist and say, okay, you've done that. So coming this way, it's not an issue. Now, if it's we have some states that will take an ABC exam and customize it and switch it around. Those scenarios, we can't take it as an across the board because it's not really the ABC exam, but otherwise we will take it when they come in.
But experience is the main key. They're checking off on that too, and that's the most important thing to me. It's not just that they can pass the test, but they meet our experience requirements in our regulation now. And I agree, it needs to stay the same.
Very good. Sorry.
Just one question I have is the year. Well, I'm struggling here for grasping for word. Are all the ABC exams on the same series, same year? Does that vary state to state for reciprocity? Do we look at that?
Currently, we don't look at what exam iteration they took as long as it's an ABC exam. And states can be using different versions. As you know, we were on the 2012 version. And then once our subject matter experts reviewed the 2017 questions, then we adopted the 2017 version, and we're going to give you an update in a little bit that there's a 2019 modification to the 2017 version. And so different states can be in different stages of that process. So they may not have gone to the 2017 version yet, or they may not have adopted the 2019 modified version yet, those types of things. But currently, we don't get into, what version. Our goal is to make sure if they took the ABC exam, then they've accomplished what they need in Virginia as far as having taken the exam.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are we ready to move forward with the next comment then?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So this looks like it's collection system operation and non-operating duties. Any comments on that?
The only comment I have is I agree with our comment back to the commenter that required experience for the license level going after has to be that of experience where experience is required. I mean, somebody that works in a hole, digging holes, and should not be able to set for a license if they're not operating in the capacity they're supposed to be operating into. So I prefer to leave our language just like it is.
I agree.
Madam
As
Chair,
do I. Yes, yes, sir.
This is Wayne again. Yeah, I agree with Tom on that as well. The key in our regulation is that we say that those duties that are exclusively non-operating duties are the ones that are precluded from being used as experience for operation for licensure. So if you exclusively work in the collection system, or if you exclusively work in the lab, or if you're exclusively the plant manager but have no operational experience or duties, then it's not suitable for you to be licensed. And I think the way we've got it set up in the board response is correct.
This is Eric. I agree with that, Wayne.
Listening. I didn't hear your comment if you made it.
Oh, sorry. I said, this is Eric, and I agree with what Wayne said.
Okay, very good. It sounds like everybody's in agreement. Anything further on that? Okay. So we'll move to the next comment about the board does not approve providers for CPE courses, about making that clear.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the board, yeah, exactly. This suggestion is kind of looking at the CPE model that the board uses and is suggesting going to a pre-approval process versus the current process where we don't have to pre-approve training providers or courses. We just make sure they fit the topic areas. And just as background for anyone who wasn't here at that time back starting in 2014 when we did the big general review of the regulations, the board did specifically consider that whether or not to keep it as it is now and look at the topic areas, which the board ultimately pulled those topic areas into the regulations to help our licensees. Or did they want to go to a pre-approval process where you have to submit your application if you want to be an approved training provider and all of that. And ultimately the board indicated at that time that they wanted to be able to have operators have options of courses and things to take, that just because a training provider hasn't come through the formal approval process, that if the importance is on them taking the education and completing the courses, but not necessarily to have the whole approval process in place.
I concur that the way that we have it right now should remain the same. I mean, if I've got requirements in-house on training exercises they have to do that's pretty much pertaining to my locality and my jurisdiction, these guys need to know how to deal with that. And if I say that training qualifies and I sign off on that sheet that they have done that, in my mind, I don't need to be paying a provider to train them in an area that provider has no knowledge of when they specifically have to do it in my locale. And one of those things is being we're required to do CPR classes every 2 years. We've got to renew and go through that. And so in my mind, that's a safety element that is a part of continuing education classes. And it doesn't need to come through DPOR for proper certification. Doesn't meet a safety requirement. So I'm happy with where it's at.
Madam Chair, this is Wayne Staples again.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with Tom and Erica on this. The key thing in this whole bit that the response says is that if someone has an issue with a company saying, okay, they've got approved CPE courses, then they're the ones that should bring it to the attention of DPOR, because DPOR is the one that would then go to that company and say, take it out of your advertisements because you do not have our approval. There is no such approval. And basically it's false advertising.
Agree.
You know, and we ran into this years ago when we were doing lab inspections on an official basis for the old State Water Control Board. And there were a couple of the commercial laboratories that as soon as we listed them as satisfactory, that they satisfactorily ran the tests they were supposed to be running, all of a sudden you'd see approved by State Water Control Board showing up in their letterhead. And we had to go through that process of calling the company up, putting enforcement on them to say, you know, you cannot say that because there is no such thing. We don't approve laboratories. We just refer or evaluate how you do the testing. And if it's satisfactory, we'll accept the data. If it's not, we don't accept it. And this is the same principle applies here.
Thank you.
And just Mr. Stables is exactly right as far as if we're notified that a provider is kind of advertising that the board has approved a course or a conference or whatever it may be for CPE, we do ask them to change that. Certainly you can say that, you know, the topic areas are accepted by the board or what have you. And we try to always meet the needs of providers. If they contact us and they want to offer a course, but they want to know in advance whether or not to be able to tell their attendees that it would be accepted by the board, we will go through and look at the topic and look at the material to say, like, yeah, it looks like if you were audited or if the operator was audited, that would fit into X category, so that they know before they go through the work of putting on a course that the topic area would be acceptable. But otherwise, it's not really an issue. And we hear from other providers, you know, on all kind of things that they want the board to get involved in kind of the marketing piece of it because of, you know, competition and all of those things. And obviously it's not appropriate for a regulatory board to intervene in like the open business market and the competitive practices and all of that of different business enterprises.
Thank you.
And I just say to you, just sitting here, you know, thinking about this meeting right now, if I've got somebody that's, say, a Class 2 operator getting up into the management portion of it, you know, I might tell them, you know, I don't know how long that DPOR meeting is, but I want you to sit in on that sit in on that meeting, watch that meeting, learn how to navigate it, and even raise your hand and ask a question during that meeting. And in my mind, that person is getting continuing education training, which is not a CPE. It's just continuing education training. If I made it mandatory, I'm going to give him, you know, 2 hours of credit for taking this, sitting through this meeting, if that's the length of the meeting. We're as far as if you're going to use a CPE to set for an examination, that's training that must be approved by DPOR. If we're talking about continuing education training and you're learning something that you've never learned before by sitting through one of these meetings, this is a good thing, and I don't need to regulate this, you know, as far as continuing education. So, last comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on that particular point? All right, then. So, and in closing, he says that anything that could be added anywhere is appropriate to provide greater clarity on the question of reciprocity.
This issue is always a little bit tough because we do understand that if there were a way to succinctly say what we're looking for from every other state, we would definitely do it. Lisa is on the call and she or in the meeting, she is the one that has to go through the regulations of all these other states to look at them when an applicant comes in. But at the end of the day, because of the variety of regulatory models that states have, there is not, that I know of, simple, this is what we'll take from another state. The classification systems aren't the same. The treatment processes aren't the same. What they're required when they come in aren't the same. And so we do evaluate those on a case-by-case basis. So it's not that we're in any way saying that those applicants can't be considered. I would say that those applicants get a lot more time in their consideration just because of the work that's involved. But again, I don't know of a way to put into the regulations what we would be looking for without inadvertently excluding some other requirement.
I strongly agree with that statement.
Tricia and Madam Chair, this is Jordan. I'm happy with the draft response as it's written. I would also add that it's not just that all of the states have various frameworks, it's that they're moving targets, just as Virginia looks at tweaks every now and then, other states too. And so it's not our intent to rewrite regulations every time a state chooses to tweak its licensure rules.
Amen to that.
Good point.
Very good.
So with that being said, Madam
sir.
Madam Chairman, I would make a motion to approve our comments back and move this on forward.
Second, Don Rickle.
Super. We have a motion on the, and I have a second. With that, we will do a roll call vote.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'll go through. James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook.
Aye.
Erica Duncan.
Aye.
Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
Aye.
Tom Four.
Aye.
Pam Pruitt.
Aye.
Don Riggleman.
Aye.
Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
Wayne Staples.
Aye.
And Caleb Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, it sounds like we have no opposition, therefore the motion is approved.
Yes, and we will need one more motion on this periodic review. And so thank you so much for going through each of those comments. The decision now of the board, because of the periodic review that we're required to do every 4 years, to make sure that the regulations are still relevant and necessary, and are serving their purpose of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. The board has 3 options, essentially. They can retain the regulation as is at this time. That doesn't mean you can't start a regulatory review at some other point. Or is to initiate a regulatory review process to amend the regulations. And then the third option would be to repeal the regulations.
Altogether. Okay.
Does staff have a recommendation?
Based on the discussion that you all just had about the public comments that we received, it sounds like the board is looking to retain the regulation as it is right now. Again, not to say that the board could decide in any time to start a regulatory review process to maybe look at some of these things, but at this time, it sounds like you all are retaining the regulations as they are.
Move that retain the regulations.
I'll second.
We have a motion on the floor and a second.
And I would just like to comment, Madam Chairman, that I know, Wayne, you were there when we went through these regulations, 3 years ago, and we spent, I don't know, probably the course of the year. Pam, you may have came in on that.
Yes.
First came in on the board, a considerable amount of time going through those regulations. And in my mind, we are, it's clear cut. And those were the only comments we got, and we got it from just one commenter. I think what we're doing is right on track, and I appreciate all the efforts and the comment back to the commenter from staff and the rationale behind all of it. I appreciate all the work on that.
Thank you. Ms. Henshaw, shall we move forward with the roll call vote?
Yes, ma'am. James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook,
Aye.
Erica Duncan,
Aye.
Jordan Evans,
Aye.
John Ewing,
Aye.
Tom Four,
Aye.
Pam Pruitt.
Aye, aye, aye.
I want that animation from everyone. No. Don Riggleman,
Aye.
Dwayne Roadcap,
Aye.
Wayne Staples,
Aye.
and Caleb Taylor.
Aye.
All right. I told you I was going to be a lot of roll call votes, but
Motion approved. Okay, so then the next, it looks like is the comments for the onsite regulations.
Yes, that's correct, Madam Chair. The comments for the on-site sewage system professionals regulations, the comment from Mr. Lynn with SES Mid-Atlantic begins on page 74 of your agenda. And then the summary of the comments and draft board responses begin on page 75.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, any comments on anything on this? I read through it. I had thoughts.
Madam Chair, comment number one from Mr. Lynn addresses the commenter's concerns about the level of supervision. In particularly, it sounds like on projects or on jobs, and then also in comparison to other regulated professions.
Yes. And I'll be the first to admit, I did not go through and look at the level of supervision required for other regulated professions. I do think that comparison might have some merit. I will fully admit that I know this individual, so I'm trying to separate personal opinion from that of my profession. Is there any merit in his comparison or asking about comparison?
So, Madam Chair, when we were going through the comments, a lot of them referred to the requirements for trades such as plumbers and electricians. So I called my counterpart with the Board for Contractors that administers the tradesman program to kind of ask the question, what do journeymen have to get those? Because we kind of, took the concept of journeyman and master licensing from the right. Professions there. But other than the titles, I would say it's a very different mechanism for regulation under the WWOOSSP board. Generally, the requirements to get a journeyman license under the tradesman program, it requires hundreds of hours of education. It requires, in some cases, several years of experience, and it also requires an examination. Unless you have like 10 or so years of experience, then you might be able to waive the examination. So the entry standards are very different for a journeyman under the WWOOSSP board versus a journeyman under the trades program. And that was intentional under the on-site sewage system program, because part of the issue was the number of people who were working without a license, who needed to have a license, but then there was the pushback and the objection to everyone having to take an exam. And so it's a different thing, even though it's the same.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's important information. Okay, so any comments on that?
I appreciate the comment that they've already installed, and I defer really you, John, and Pam, when it comes to your, the profession that you're in, the requirements of what's needed for you to say to DPOR that they've got what they need. I think you all went through that initially to come up with what the reg should say on that. And so, therefore, unless you all think there needs to be a change, I'm happy with it.
I don't think there needs to be a change, to be honest with you. And creates a completely different picture for me in my mind now that I understand what the other journeyman level entry requirements are. That's a game changer.
Yeah, I don't think there needs to be any change. And as far as the homeowner part goes, like everything we do that he described is a reportable incident, and that's something that operator has to report to the health department. And just my personal experience with homeowners and doing any of their own work, it's never been a practical approach from my viewpoint.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I would agree with that too. I do get a lot of pushback on homeowners who tell me, well, it's my house, why can't I do it? You know, such as replacing pumps or, you know, even replacing sewer lines between a building and a tank. You know, if they can dig a trench and tie it in, they're the ones who have to deal with the consequences if it isn't done right. So I get negative feedback because they think that since it's their house, they should be able to work on it or replace pumps if they're handy enough to do it. So, but, you know, if the General Assembly says they have to do it, then they have to get
there
someone.
May be a certain percentage of the public that could do it.
I know people who can replace pumps, and I've
I
had
think it's
customers.
going to be less and less.
What's that?
But it's not a ton of people out there that could.
No.
It's becoming less and less as.
I would agree with that. But you know yourself, I mean, well, replacing pumps, I've had people watch me do it, and, you know, and they see it's pretty straightforward if they don't mind getting their hands dirty. Or even if that's the case, just unstopping tees. That's maintenance also. But anyway, my comment is, you know, I see their point, a homeowner wanting to be able to do things themselves because it is their home. But I'm not looking to change it, no, the regulations.
Thank you. Anything further on that? Okay, so are we okay with the staff comments then?
Yes.
Yes and yes. Okay. So next, sir.
All right. So the next item, comment number 2, the commenter indicates generally a lack of clarity between, and I'll characterize it this way, who's allowed to perform what work. And once the board and VDH to make these things clear to the industry.
I'm going to comment on that. and here's what I see you smiling at me, Trish. And here's what I had this very discussion this morning with someone that it's my responsibility to understand the confines of my license and what I can do under my license. I'm responsible to hold that license, just as if I have a driver's license. I'm responsible to know what the rules and regulations are. I'm not going to call DMV and say, hey, can I drive 6 people to a winery today? You know, that's not a question. I'm struggling with that because, and my conversation this morning is that you're a licensed professional. You have a license through DPOR. Do you not understand what your abilities are on that license? If you don't, you need to go back and look at the rules and regulations that describe your license. So could there be a better outreach maybe through VDH and DPOR? Yes, but does that need to be regulated? No. That's my opinion. Anybody else?
Well, I'd like to add also, the regulations are not that lengthy to review and take a look and see what you can and cannot do. So I agree. It should be pretty straightforward.
You got anything to offer there, Mr. Ewing?
I agree with everything you said. That's all good with me.
Okay. Then how do we feel about staff comments? or the staff response? Are we good?
Yeah, appropriate.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Madam Chair, we'll move on to comment number 3. The commenter is suggesting there should be a process for practitioners who do not have a master licensee to work under for them to become licensed. And he notes that the DPOR and BDH should try to get rid of unlicensed practitioners.
I don't want to be the sole speaker on this, but I think in past meetings I voiced my opinion somewhat about unlicensed practitioners, and we don't regulate unlicensed practitioners. We regulate licensed practitioners, like it or not. I mean, that's a whole other can of worms to open up that, and I think that's separate from, unless we want to craft regulations to regulate unlicensed practitioners.
We can't send cease and desist letters, right?
Pardon me, sir?
Can we now send cease and desist letters? That's something we weren't doing before. It was always just referred to the AG's office. Now we have a little sort of firecracker we throw there to kind of.
Madam Chair.
Good memory, Ms. Ewing. Oops.
If I may.
Yeah.
The statute has been amended to grant the agency director authority to issue cease and desist letters to try to address some of the antitrust concerns that exist with the board issuing such letters. Our policy, guided by counsel, is still rather limited in doing so because those antitrust issues still exist with unlicensed activity. And so if we receive a complaint of unlicensed activity and are unable to obtain compliance and, a variety of other criteria are satisfied, and at your next meeting we can present, the policy to you. I don't have it in front of me, and nor do I think it's probably the board's wish for me to obtain it and read through it right now. But that's the short answer. There is departmental authority to issue cease and desist letters for unlicensed activity, but again, to address those North Carolina dental concerns about antitrust activity, it is still a narrowly executed authority.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. If I may indulge you, I would like to understand that better at our next meeting. And I ask that because I repeatedly receive calls from licensed practitioners, and that's a big topic for the on-site community. I've had up close and personal dealings with one unlicensed practitioner that I do know is under I want to say felony prosecution right now, and it's through DPOR investigators, and I am applauding that, but it's an issue that a lot of people struggle with, and they come to me saying, with their opinions about what we do, and they're usually pretty negative because they can't, I get the frustration, I guess is what I should just say to be succinct. Thank you.
Well, I just want to point out that you said something about a driver's license a little while ago. You're riding down the road and you ain't got your driver's license and it's been revoked or taken away from you. We have authority now through the director to cease and desist these folks. And beyond that, I don't need additional clarity. I mean, I want everybody else to get all the clarity that they want. But in my mind, we're always going to have those folks that are doing those things, and that's why this board exists, to take care of those that have license, that are doing it the wrong way. We hear it. We take care of it. We do that business. And to those that do not have that, there are other mechanisms that we use now. And, I don't think anything needs to be changed.
I concur with you there.
And thank staff for their excellent commenting back on that question.
I have a question, Pam, or
Yes.
Tricia, or Mary. I understand the concept that as the licensing board for these operators, installers, et cetera, we have jurisdiction over their activities if they're licensed.
Correct.
What is our responsibility and what is our control, if any, over those people who are not licensed? Is it only when they practice without a license, or do we even have any authority there?
Madam Chair, we have no authority over unlicensed activity. If I could pick up on Mr. Ford's analogy with the driver's license, if you're driving on a suspended license or without a license, you are not pulled over by the DMV. You're pulled over by the state police or local law enforcement. We have no authority over unlicensed individuals. The board has authority over its licensees only. I hope that is responsive to your question.
I'd like to throw a comment in too, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, Chairwoman.
Yes.
By now, everyone in our industry knows you're supposed to have a license. So if anybody has not pursued the license, they're willfully neglecting the regulations. It's not ignorance. You can't plead that any longer. So I also would like to hear more about these cease and desist letters and what we can do. The fact that we're supposed to call the local sheriff and report someone pumping a septic tank because they don't have a license is ridiculous. But if there's anything we can do, I'd like to look into it because they've had time. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
And Madam Chair, I made a note that for the next board meeting, we will do a presentation on the cease and desist policy. And so I will consult with our director on putting that together. So we can certainly do that for the next meeting. And and certainly it's something I hear every time I go out and present. Back in the old days in Mr. Roadcap's prior life, we used to address that quite a bit. And so certainly know it's an issue. I will say it's not an issue that solely belongs to the regulant or the non-regulants, so to speak, of this board. We hear about it I can't speak to all of them, but I hear it for a number of my other programs, and certainly the other boards have unlicensed activity issues as well. And so with the comment that this specific comment that was submitted, we kind of looked at it twofold. One was kind of a narrow drawing of the unlicensed issue to how do you gain experience if you don't have a master licensee to work under, which is a real world issue for anyone entering a regulated profession. Every regulated profession, I would venture to say, has some type of experience component. And that experience is gained under someone else in that profession in order to do it properly. And yes, you have to find someone in that profession who's going to impart, their wisdom and give you that supervision. And so this is no different. And so it could mean that, on the weekends, you see if there's a master installer who's willing to let you go and learn the ropes. And so we look at a part-time basis, that type of thing. One of the things that we hear about and are much more active in different parts of our agency that we kind of got into in the response is apprenticeship programs. If there's an issue with people being able to gain experience under another licensee who, is running their own business or whatever, that's another mechanism, but it's not really a DPOR mechanism. It's something that any employer can work through the relevant processes for apprenticeships to offer that as an option. So that's kind of the direction we went based on that part of the comment. And then, of course, there's the broader unlicensed issue and the fairness in competing with someone who's not gone through all the training and all of that necessary to have a license.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's valuable information. Do we have any further comments? How are we feeling about response? I hear crickets. Yay?
Looks good to me.
Yep, yay, sounds good.
Same
Does
here.
anybody have-
Yeah, I think we can move on with the response.
Okay, very good then. So, and that, does that cover it, sir? The comments?
I think we have two more comments. The next
Oh.
comment application process in localities. The draft response is pretty straightforward. The board doesn't have any authority for permitting and certification exercised by localities.
Okay. Very quiet out there.
I agree with
Mr.
the
Ewing, got any?
I agree with the comment that we have no authority.
Concur.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.
And then the last comment, Madam Chair, I think some of the board members already addressed this. This has to do with homeowners who aren't authorized to form a license. And as noted by some of the members earlier, that would require a change in state law, which the board doesn't have the authority to do.
I agree with that.
And I will say, Madam Chair, this is something that I try to include a blurb about it in every outreach presentation that I do, because I do know that it is a point of contention and confusion is what can homeowners do under our on-site sewage system professional program, and if they're not licensed, they can't do anything. And part of that confusion stems from the fact that back before the Ossp licensing and all of that, as a homeowner, you are exempt from contractor licensing. So they could install their own systems because they did not have to have a contractor's license because of that specific exemption that is in the contractor law. For whatever reason, when this law was crafted for on-site sewage system professionals, there was not an exemption included for homeowners doing work on septic systems. And so all those folks who for years were kind of doing their own thing with their own septic systems, that's no longer applicable and really hasn't been applicable since 2009 when on-site licensing came about.
Thank you. And I will add to that to say, and I've been in this industry 35 years, and I'm a former regulator, and I have seen some atrocities by homeowners. I think that I have seen in the 10 years that I've been in the industry, one good homeowner job. So they may not like it, but I am completely fine with it, because coming behind and trying to fix that, you can't undig a septic system once it's been incorrectly dug, and a homeowner typically does not have those KSAs. So with that, do we have any further comments then? Concerns? We okay with staff recommendations or responses?
Make a motion to approve staff recommendations.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a couple seconds on the floor. Do we have any discussion on the matter? Then we shall take a roll call vote.
Yes, Madam Chair. James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook.
Aye.
Erica Duncan.
Aye.
Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
Aye.
Tom Ford.
Aye.
Pam Pruitt.
Yar!
Don Riggleman.
Aye.
Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
Wayne Staples.
Aye.
And Caleb Taylor.
Aye.
All
We
right.
have all ayes. The motion.
And so again, oops.
Well, we need a second. Yes, thank you. You go.
All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. Got ahead of myself. The next motion would be related to the periodic review, just as we did on the water and wastewater regulation. So the options are to retain as is, to initiate a regulatory action to amend the regulations, or to repeal the regulation.
Madam Chair, I'd move to retain the regulations as is.
I second.
We have a motion in a couple seconds. Do we have comments? Discussion. I will make one comment such as Mr. Ford indicated concerning the wastewater comments. We have one comment from one individual, or we have a set of comments, one response from one individual. If we had 25 with 25 or 26 different things, I think we'd need to look long and hard. But we have one set of comments that the individual fully admitted it was more of a rant to him. So I think we're on the right path. Anything further? Wait, you're ducking. Get out of there. So with that, we'll take a roll call vote.
James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook.
Aye.
Erica Duncan.
Aye.
Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
Aye.
Tom Four.
Aye.
Pam Pruitt.
Yeah, baby.
Don Riggleman.
Aye.
Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
Wayne Staples.
Aye.
And Caleb Taylor.
Aye.
All right.
Good, the motion passes. So we have another, Trish, I'm going to get you to read this next agenda item because I don't think I can get it correct. I think we amended it, didn't we? Or did we?
Yes, we did, Madam Chair. So the next agenda item is to consider a regulatory action to amend fees. And so this begins, it currently says exempt action, but it'll be a standard action. And this is on...
It's on page 80.
Thank you, Joe. I knew you'd be on it. And so just as background, obviously, as you all know, the boards operate based on the fees that they collect. So we don't get general fund monies or anything like that. It's, the expenses that the board has are covered by the revenues, and we have to ensure that those stay within a percentage to make sure we aren't collecting too much or collecting too little in our operations. And so those are constantly undergoing analysis by people who are much better with numbers than I am. And these fees have not been increased in 16 years for Waterworks and Wastewater Works, and in 11 years since the beginning for on-site sewage system professionals. Because of where we are right now with our revenues and expenses, the recommendation is to have an increase in fees. But there are three proposals that staff has put together for the board to consider. And those proposals look at where you want to have the increases, essentially. So on the proposals that are there, Proposal A is lookable. So in actuality, it would only result in an increase for renewal fees. Application fees would stay at $100. The Proposal B option looks at having application fees higher than renewal fees. And so, the board may wish to have the higher fees on the front end when someone is coming into the profession. And then once they're licensed, those ongoing renewal fees would be the lower fee. Finally, Proposal C is the opposite. It sets forth the renewal fees to be higher than the application fees. Because of the number of renewals that we have versus the number of new applicants that are coming in, that actually would reduce in a lower application fee than what we have right now, just because the big factor that kind of shifts our revenues is in the renewals, just because of the volume of renewals that we have between all the Waterworks and Wastewater Works operators, as well as all the on-site sewage system professionals.
Very good thing.
Didn't you lower fees last time it was changed?
Yes, Mr. Ewing. A couple of or a biennium ago, when the analysis was done, we were in a position that the recommendation was to do a temporary fee reduction. It was for a very set period of time. I think it was a 2-year time period. So all of our waterworks and wastewater works kind of had one renewal period where they had the lower fees, and similarly for the on-site sewage system professionals. You may recall a couple of years ago, it may have been last year, we've lived through decades in the last year, the General Assembly put into the budget bill language that required us to move any excess money in any of our accounts into a reserve fund that's to be used for specific expenses in the agency. So computer systems, certain positions, certain infrastructure needs, those types of things. So those have been set aside for those specific purposes. Of course, now that it's set aside, it is gone now from the board's funds. And so we are looking at, having to make sure that we, our expenses and revenues are within that Callahan Act percentage. And so that's one of the things that is kind of, affecting this. But of course, anytime you're talking about IT needs, those types of things, you undertake a big IT project, that's going to impact the expenses of the agency because we spread those across all the boards.
Madam Chairman, just in the last couple of years, just watching what's been happening, especially with our transitioning to the ABC test, I would prefer to see option C in place because some of these localities will not pay for that test over and over and over again, and they're taking that test multiple times. And I would rather see that on the application side be lowered. We know we're all going to have to renew our water and wastewater and on-site licenses every 2 years, the way it rolls. And that's a one-time expense. We don't have to do it every month like you would with a test. And so I would prefer to see option C.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, if it's helpful at all to the board, that philosophy is what many of our boards have been following, is the idea that entrants to professions are also incurring exam and education costs, and so they have been largely adopting option C so that entrants to the profession are incurring the lower fees, and those already established in the renewal are incurring those slightly higher fees, as Mr. Four alluded to, if that's helpful.
Thank you.
With that being said, I'd like to make a motion to approve option C.
I'll second it.
I agree.
Oh, motion with several seconds. Do we have any discussion on the matter? I will say that I do think that for consistency amongst other boards, I do think I like that idea, but in looking at it myself, I had the same thoughts. So with that, why don't we move forward with the roll call vote?
Yes, Madam Chair. James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook.
Aye.
Erica Duncan.
Aye.
Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
Calling Mr. Ewing.
He froze.
He's frozen in time.
He's contemplating. I'll come back. Tom Four.
Aye.
Pam Pruitt.
Yes, I do.
Don Riggleman.
Aye.
Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
Wayne Staples.
Aye.
Caleb Taylor.
Aye.
Do we have John back?
John? Hello? He might be lost in space. I can see him, but I can't hear him, and he ain't moving. Oh. Did he go away?
I think he's probably trying to get back in. And I will say that, and Mary, I'm sure caught it. After watching the virtual committee meeting of the House of Delegates this morning, I'm feeling pretty good about where we are in our virtual environment.
Oh, really? Okay. That makes me feel good.
Jordan, I know you are in tune to a lot of that too. You may have seen your own.
We're doing pretty well here.
All right. Well, I'm going to not hold up, but I will have that space here. I'm just looking to make sure he didn't get back in. But it'll pass either way because the majority vote.
Okay. So then we have the motion has passed. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Very good. Hallelujah. With that, I see the next agenda item is other business with the Ossp 2020 CPE Audit Report.
Sorry, I got kicked out.
Uh-oh.
There you are. And so
And I said aye.
You did say aye. Thank you. It was all riding on you, John.
All right.
All right. So for the audit report, if I can get Tanya to give the update, since she has been a huge lifesaver in keeping all of these important things going while we are still have a vacancy for our board administrator position.
Yep. So on the 2020 on-site sewage system professionals audit, we had a total of 31 regulants that were selected for audit. I managed to wrangle all but 2 into compliance. So we had 29 total received. All 29 of those folks passed. Only 2 were forwarded for disciplinary action, and actually of those 2, just this past Tuesday, day before yesterday, I received an email from one of them that they were choosing to surrender their license. So that's it for on-site 2020 CPEs.
Thank you. How about some examination updates?
All right. I have, we have the Waterworks and Wastewater Works exam statistics that we provided you with at each meeting. And then we also have, they came a little bit later, but you do have the on-site sewage system professional examination pass rates as well. And so those are provided for informational purposes. And then
very good.
The other update that I wanted to mention is that last year, I think we started earlier in last year, for the ABC exams, the board had decided to conduct a kind of mini review of the exam questions that were being introduced as kind of the 2019 modification of the 2017 standardized exams. And this was just kind of a standard update to, you know, when they rolled in a new exam, you know, it was a complete overhaul of the examination. Of course, you know, they continue to look at the questions to see how they're performing, to look at sample questions that they use throughout or experimental questions they use throughout to see how candidates perform with those and whether or not to incorporate them into the exam. We had our subject matter experts come in recently and do that for us, and most appreciative for our Waterworks. We had Caleb, Tom, and Rose, I believe, who helped with those reviews. Do I have that right? And then for Wastewater, we had Erica, named from the past, Perry Green helped us. And then we also had Jason with DEQ, who works with Wayne, who helped us out with those reviews. And so their recommendation was to go ahead and accept the modified exam after they reviewed it. And so we are working on putting that into production. And I'm looking, Shannon is here somewhere and might be able to.
I'm back. I had to go to a polygraph, but I am back. Yeah. So all of that is correct. The exam is in production currently. We wanted to go live on January, and it is, I confirmed, it is live as we speak. And I did submit all of
Very
the
good.
recommendations and information that was given to me and us on the day of the exam review. ABC will review the exam. It'll be done when they do their regular reviews. They told me, and I understood, we all talked about this on the day of the review, that just because we submitted the information doesn't mean they're going to change anything, but they will take those into consideration when they do their reviews. So again, we appreciate all the time and effort that everyone took into reviewing the exams, and I'm extremely appreciative. And again, I have sent all that information except for the exams. I sent the information that was documented on the days of the review, and it is on to ABC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Wayne.
Yes.
I've just with a cursory look at the values that I'm seeing on these charts, it appears that the numbers are getting somewhat better. They're still,
Yes.
below 50%, but they're going up. And this, as I noticed, this is based on from 1/1/2017 to date.
Okay.
And usually what I ask for, and I'll do that through email later, Trish, is maybe if we can get the values from the last evaluation to date, to see if there's been any major changes since October. I know I usually ask for that, but my mind works in a certain way, and I don't have my past values with me. I need to go back down to the office and grab that file to bring home with me since I'm working from home. But I usually can work it out as to, how well did we do from October to January of October 2020 to January of 2021 versus from January 17 to 2021, because all that's rolled into one, and it takes longer for the numbers to go up rather than see that, oh yeah, we had a major jump in an increase in October to January, because like I say, it looks like the numbers are inching up, and I suspect that maybe they're doing better than that in the shortfall.
Thank you.
And yes, Mr. Ford, I usually will try to, and I, like you, I have some different ones that I try to keep track of based on the different actions that the board has taken. So not just when there's been a change in the examination. So with on-site sewage system professionals, we try to break it up and look at it when you all rewrote questions and those were incorporated. We kind of see how it's performing overall based on those time periods for the ABC exams, not just when they've gone to a different exam, but we also look at it when you all gave them the extra hour. Mm-hmm. What impact does that have on the numbers? And so I can go back and get those filled in, and I'm happy to distribute them to the board members, and certainly Mr. Staples, any numbers, information I can provide, I'm happy to do that, because you do a whole lot more with those numbers than I do, so it's a huge help.
Would it be helpful to get the information, since we started in January with this updated exam, would it be helpful to get from January until, I don't know when your next board meeting is, until that, would you be okay with that data?
Yeah, that would be very good.
Okay, perfect.
Very good. Are we ready to move on then? All right. DPOR updates as it relates to our COVID-19 response.
Yes, Madam Chair. These are a lot of the updates that we have provided you with previously, but just want to make sure that we keep you all in the loop as to the actions the department and the board staff have taken as it relates to various measures. We've all had to make adjustments in our business practices with the COVID-19 pandemic. And so as I shared previously, there are several waivers that the director issued, and that was based on an authorization in the governor's executive order that was issued last March. And so those are still in place. So that includes the extension of the exam eligibility deadlines to 30 days after the end of the emergency, and there is currently not an end date to the emergency. Also, extension of expiration dates to 30 days after the end of the emergency, waiver of regulations that prohibit or limit online or distance learning. In July of last year, the WWOOSSP board specifically asked for a waiver that would allow CPE instructors who've had to undergo, extensive changes to their programs to adapt to a virtual environment to increase the allowance from 2 hours per license cycle to 3 hours per license cycle for those updates. And so that is still in effect. And then a new one that doesn't impact our boards, but just want to make sure you know about it. Any of the boards that have regulations that require a physical presence of a licensee at a place of business, obviously with teleworking and remote working and all those different things, that's not practical to have those requirements. And so there is currently a waiver of those regulations that require that in-person physical presence at a place of business. In terms of our operations, we're still pretty much business as usual. As I shared previously, our staff is teleworking. We did recently, just this month, increase the number of days that our staff is teleworking just because of the increase in cases and wanting to do everything we can to ensure staff is protected. Fortunately, we've done, I would say, a pretty good job considering, some of the resources and that type of thing of moving our call centers off site. So the call centers are with our remote teams. And so they're answering phones, they're checking emails, all of those things. Our call center is still currently 8:30 to 1. But emails are checked all the time. And, so anyone needs us after those times, certainly staff is taking care of that as we go forward. Application processing, still right on time. We've not had an interruption in that. And that is along with, having some staff vacancies in the midst of all of this. So, we're excited in some really challenging times that staff has done a phenomenal job in keeping going. And I will say, the licensing staff here is just phenomenal. And I don't say that because, they're on my team, even though I'm glad to be on their team. They've kept things going like nobody's business. So.
All righty then. Thank you. How about board financial statements?
Yes, Madam Chair, those are provided again for informational purposes. And so they're on page 90 of your electronic agenda. And just to kind of go back to the previous item where the board adopted the change in fees, you can kind of see on here is a snapshot of what we're currently collecting as far as revenues compared to what our expenses are in general, and see that those numbers don't quite line up currently, and so that's one of the reasons behind the change in fees.
Very good, thank you. How about we talk about outreach?
Yes, Madam Chair, certainly not what it used to be. I've come to find that I, miss getting out and talking to people one day, maybe, I hope. But I have been talking to people just remotely. The good news for them is now when I do presentations, they can push pause or, go fix ice cream or something. So I did do a presentation for the NOWR conference that was held in virtually, of course, in November. And so I pre-recorded the presentation and it was available, I think, from October-ish to December. And then we did a live Q&A. The presenters for the Virginia module did a Q&A on November 16th, which was a lot of fun. Then we have coming up a presentation. It was actually my very last, I think, in-person presentation last year. It's virtual this year, and our own Caleb Taylor has been, hard at work and doing a phenomenal job with the Virginia Tech programs. And so the Virginia Tech Groundwater course is being held, I think, the second week of February. And so February 10th, we'll be doing a licensing presentation. And so I always appreciate Caleb and all the folks at Virginia Tech for including us. And I don't envy the work that he's had to do on all of this. And then finally, a pending thing is usually this time of year we have a stakeholder meeting with VDH to talk about, operator certification and capacity issues. And I know a few of you are a part of that. Ms. Cook, I see you all the time normally out there in Roanoke. But again, we're working on trying to see if it's feasible to schedule that, but it will, of course, be virtual as well. And so those are the things we have going on as far as our outreach efforts.
Thank you. Got any other business out there in Never Never Land?
Let's see.
Madam Chair, I just have one item. Any members who have not yet completed their financial disclosure statements or haven't received the email from the Conflict of Interest Ethics Council, please do so. They are due February 1st. If you do not know what I'm talking about, please contact Tricia. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. What else we got?
I have a question, probably for the board members with more tenure. It used to be that when operators passed the exam, they would receive a certificate at the time with the level of licensure for the license for passing the exam. And now we just send out one certificate. I guess we have been a few facilities like to post that, and I just wanted to see why it was changed.
Yes, Mr. Riggleman, he's referring to, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, the wall certificates that are issued to our licensees when they pass the examination. In addition to the license card, which is their official license, we also have kind of a decorative wall certificate. And so a few years ago when we changed our computer system, one of the things that it impacted is how our records are kept in our computer database. And it took away our ability to put the class of license on the wall certificates. To be quite frank, the part I struggle with is now you get like 4 to 6 certificates that just say Waterworks operator or Wastewater works operator each time you go up through the different classes of exam. I've given up on that fight, but no, unfortunately it doesn't have the class. We are working on going to a different license system in the next year or so. I will definitely keep in mind that as a wish list item, that if there's a way we can go back to having the class on the certificate, we'll certainly do that. And if I'm not mistaken, for the on-site sewage system professionals, I don't think I think they are issued wall certificates, but I don't think it includes either conventional or alternative. I'm trying to think back.
I think it just includes your license number.
Okay.
I don't be wrong though.
Don, I would say that there has been no action by the board to discontinue that. I think Trish told you why it hadn't been sent out. It didn't have anything to do with the board taking action.
Yes, absolutely. That answers my question. Thank you for the excellent explanation.
Thank you. I just noticed that I skipped over the update on the JLARC study.
Yes, Madam Chair, I was going to back you up when we got through that item. So at the last meeting, one of the things that came up, I don't think it was on the agenda, but I can't remember that for sure. But the board talked about a study that was being conducted at the request of JLARC, Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, that had come in and looked at all of DPOR's processes. And one of the things that they had suggested was looking at several professions and occupations under the agency that should be considered whether or not they're appropriate for continued regulation. The agency did that process over the last year or so. Obviously, like everything, it got derailed a little bit with the pandemic and moving everything from a in-person environment to a virtual environment, but it was finished in time and submitted to the appropriate members of the General Assembly as directed. And so I wanted to make sure to share with you the update of that final report issued by the Board for Professional and Occupational Regulation dealing with soil scientists and with backflow prevention device workers, because those were the two that were kind of discussed specifically at the last meeting. So as you can see in the documentation, which we gave you the whole report, but to kind of just drill down to those two things, for soil scientists, the recommendation in the final report was to revert back to a voluntary certification program. You'll see in the report there are a number of factors that are in the statute that the board is required to look at, not this board, the Board for Professional and Occupational Regulation, whenever they're looking at a regulatory program in terms of increasing, decreasing regulation. And so for each of these different professions, they looked at all of those items, and in the report there's a breakdown of all of those analysis based on each of those items. And then for backflow prevention device workers, they're currently a certification program. The recommendation in the final report was to consider deregulating, but that's with the caveat that this could, if they were to deregulate, it could create a conflict with pending VDH regulations that actually will require that the person doing those that work be a backflow prevention device worker. Just so you know, these again are just recommendations based on that analysis of the criteria in the statute. It's up to the General Assembly to decide whether or not it wants to take up any of those recommendations, or if it wants to do its own thing, or, you know, if it wants to light a fire during the cold weather with the final report. You know, it's up to, you know, the General Assembly as to whether or not there's any increase, decrease in any regulatory program. But we have submitted the report of the Board for Professional and Occupational Regulation. So if there are any questions on that, I'm happy to try to help. I wasn't deeply involved in that process at all, so I'll do my best.
I think we're good.
All right.
That said, we have a future meeting date. Lest we forget. April
I'm going to have to back you up one more time.
Uh-oh. What did I
There are
do?
a couple other things. The 2021 legislative update. Don't have a whole lot, and this was just added because we now have an update because we've had a few things that have come through just here in the last week or so that I just want to let you know some of the things we're tracking. And without going through the whole process, just so you know, staff monitors any legislation that's coming in that affects the boards or its programs. Some things are assigned to us, so we do analysis, and that might be when I reach out to you all as, you know, our subject matter experts, especially when it's talking about technical things that I need you to help me with, or getting kind of the pulse of the various industries, you know, what they think of the different proposals that are coming through. And so there's one that's been assigned to us, another one that we're just monitoring that I wanted to share with you, and then a couple that I've seen come through just for the agency overall that I wanted to let you know that I'm kind of keeping. 1974. This one is specific to on-site sewage system professionals, more specifically on-site soil evaluators. The proposal is to essentially expand the exemption in the professional engineering code that makes it possible for on-site soil evaluators to do their work with septic systems in terms of designing those systems. And it would expand, the current limitation is 1,000 gallons per day. It would increase it to 1,200 gallons per day. And then it also removes the provisions related to pumps. So essentially that caveat that it has a pump, includes a pump that would no longer be there. It also takes out the term pre-packaged. I'm not sure of the particular significance of this. A couple of things I will point out. Delegate Rush put in this legislation. It's noted as by request. That kind of lets us know that this wasn't necessarily a part of the legislators' personal agenda package or the agenda package being put forward under their priorities. It's something that a constituent asked for, and so it was put in generally, and talking to different folks in the industry and kind of working on the analysis for this, I didn't get the sense that this was a call from the industry. But I also don't get the sense there's a huge weight either way as to whether or not this happens. So again, we'll be monitoring that as it goes forward. The other one that just came through that we're monitoring, it's not assigned to us, is House Bill 2188, and it essentially directs the Department of Health and the Department of Environmental Quality to initiate a study of a pilot program for engineered septic systems that house and treat sewage in an elevated self-contained unit. This is kind of to address some of the issues with those areas that are prone to flooding and have high water tables. So our friends at VDH and DEQ, who maybe didn't have enough to study, we've given them a few more things, maybe. Just want to touch on a couple other things because I know our chair we're going to get her out of here on time. There are a couple of bills that are kind of more of could impact the overall detour and operations of the board, of the agency and its programs. One is, let's see, House Bill 2259 would allow the governor to issue a license in the event that the license is denied by a board. So, for example, applicant comes to you for consideration based on whether it's criminal history, waiver of certain requirements, that type of thing, and the board denies the application. This would allow the governor to override that denial. Currently, there is a process for that. It's through the courts. You can appeal any decision of the board except for a consent order, but this would allow some mechanism for the governor to do that. There are also a few, no surprise, that are kind of in the Freedom of Information Act, but have to do with electronic meetings. Wonder where that came from, to kind of loosen up some of the rules to allow electronic meetings without all of the caveats that are currently on it that can make it difficult for us to do these things. And then there also are some various bills to expunge certain criminal records. The reason we watch those, of course, are because the boards all have language, but specifically you all have language that talks about reporting certain criminal offenses. And so if those are expunged, it could change the way the board does things and the things that the board could ask for in terms of certain past criminal records. And so that's just kind of a quick overview of some of those that we are watching and will continue to do so. And obviously, if there are any more that come through that are specific to the board, don't be surprised if you hear from me. And it's just kind of make sure I'm going in the right direction as we send the analysis up through the chain to the governor's office on those various bills. And that's all I have under legislative update. I just have a couple of quick things under other business if there are no questions about that. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you under other business is there was a recent press release from the governor that announced new steps to accelerate vaccination efforts. And the reason I'm sharing it is that there was specific phases that were outlined in that. And one of the phases, phase 1C, spoke specifically to public health workers, wastewater workers, that type of thing. And so we've advised staff, just in case we were to get questions about that. It's not really in a licensing purview, but just to make sure that they're aware that they are specifically mentioned in the phase 1C vaccination directive issued by the governor. So just wanted to put that on your radar. The only other thing that I wanted to ask that is a relatively new thing, but was brought to me by our licensing staff, and I think it's important. One of the things that we do for Waterworks and Wastewater Works, which of course has a lot more history, is when we're looking at those out-of-state applications, we have a specific form for out-of-state facility descriptions and experience. And so this is kind of getting to that previous conversation we had about the differences in what states have in terms of treatment processes and their classifications. And it's a mechanism for us to be able to compare it to Virginia. And I'm working on getting it up on the screen just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Licensees with on-site sewage system professional licenses, and similarly, none of them are the same. You all probably know better than I do that it doesn't seem that any state licenses those folks and those professions the same. Some are done on a state level, some are done by localities. But again, we try to do review those applications on a case-by-case basis and see where they fit in, if they can fit into our licensing. One of the things we've realized, because again, we're regulatory people, we aren't the technical people, you all are, is that we'd like to put together a form similar for out-of-state on-site sewage system professional applicants, but there may be a lot of treatment areas and a lot of processes and a lot of things that you all know that we don't know. And so we wanted to see if it might be possible to put together a small committee of on-site sewage system professionals, from the board, if you wanted someone, invite members of the public or like a, VDH who deals with the permitting side, to be on a committee. I'm thinking a one-time committee to help us kind of go through in detail those things so that we could put together a form to help our out-of-state applicants be able to show what they have and what experience they have. And then if there are any other issues specific to licensing that would be helpful for those on-site sewage system professional subject matter experts to help staff with on that. And so I'm thinking if the board is in agreement of that, I can certainly work with the board chair on the committee membership. And I'm thinking 3 to 5 members. I'm not thinking some huge new committee. But if the board were to agree with that, I would like to get a motion just to formalize it, and then I can work with the board chair on the membership. If there are any board members who are interested, then certainly if the chair so wishes, she could ask for those volunteers.
Oh, no. I would encourage John and James and Pam to take care of this. If you want to add some more, fine, but I think those 3 would do a great job for the board. That's my motion.
I agree.
Chairman.
You can sign me up.
I'll second it.
That's right. Y'all keep smiling and help them out.
Yeah, I'll help. Yeah.
There you go.
I was going to say, y'all, I didn't even hear an option there. I heard a motion and a second, and it just went on by you.
Call for the question there in the roll call vote, Madam Chairman.
All right. So with that, James Brockwell, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Aye.
Rosa Cook.
Aye.
Erica Duncan.
Aye. Sorry.
You're okay. Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
I guess.
Tom Ford.
Aye.
He was strongly in favor of that one. Pam Pruitt. She's still thinking about it. Oh, she can't
Her
hear.
appointment.
Uh-oh.
She have to go.
She can't hear. Unfortunately, it's on the road to passing without her vote. I'm going to skip and see if we can get back to her. Don Riggleman.
Aye. I think Pam's shaking her head yes.
Dwayne Roadcap. Okay, we got an aye from Pam. Dwayne Roadcap, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Thank you. Wayne Staples.
Aye.
Caleb Taylor.
Aye.
That was the last roll call vote for the meeting. Thank y'all for bearing with me on that. All right. Pam, are you able to hear yet? Doesn't look like it.
I think she's left the building.
I see her there, but I think there's some kind of technical difficulty. All right. Mr. Ford, that is the last item on the regular calendar. So just the future meeting dates and the conflict of interest, if you don't mind closing us out.
David, close you out. Anybody got anything they'd like to bring to the attention of the board before we finish up?
I have one quick question, Trish. Is it okay to share that report about the recommendations? I don't know if it's published yet or not, and so I didn't know whether to share that. I'm getting lots of questions about backflow prevention device.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. And if you'd like, I can send you a clean copy if that would help to be able to share that with anyone who asks for it.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Anybody else have anything with that? Pam, thank you for all your meeting capabilities and keeping us on track. Appreciate what you did. Tricia, we thank you for that and all staff's participation in this meeting. I think it went very, very well, and appreciate all your efforts. With that being said, again, don't forget to fill out your conflict of interest forms, and next meeting date is what? Want to say that for us, Trish?
April 29th is our next meeting date, and so we'll see where we are in terms of virtual or not when we get there.
All right. Do I need a motion to close this meeting up?
I got a question first.
Okay.
On the conflict of interest forms, if we have to fill them out for our primary job, do we have to also submit them, or does it just go to the same place?
It's my understanding, and I have not heard there's a change from past years, that is state employees and some local employees, if you do those conflict of interest forms and all of that, then those submit them once and that takes care of it. Just let us know. That way I can make sure to check you off the list so that we're not hounding you to death.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Move we adjourn.
Got a motion? Got to get a second? Got a second? Any further discussion? You need a roll call vote, or will ayes do it on this?
For this one, it's a call of the chair, so we are good.
We're going to say aye. Everybody have a great day. Thank you very much. See you guys.
See you in April.
Thank you so much.
Take care.